all. Thanks so much for watching the Stephanie Feals show. I'm Stephanie Feals, and today I'm joined by Maggie Stenger, who has been working in the modeling industry for 10 years. Thanks so much for being here.
Hi, Stephanie. Thank you for having me.
I'm excited to chat with you and learn more about your journey. And so let's just start there. Why don't you tell me a little bit about how you got to where you are now and what that journey's been like for you?
So, right now, at this second, I am living in Boulder, Colorado. I moved here about 2 years ago. But before that, I was a full time working model starting in Seattle and then both in New York City and Los Angeles. Um, I started modeling when I was about 14. My mom really encouraged me to do that. She knew a friend in the industry who thought that I would be great. So we went in for a casting call. And as a 14-year-old, I was terrified, but it worked out and they offered me a contract. So I worked in Seattle while I was still in high school for the next 3 or 4 years. I met another agency through the Seattle one when I was about 17. I signed with them, and then right after I graduated high school that summer, I moved to New York City by myself and just kept working pretty much until COVID. Took a break for COVID, obviously, like we all had to. And then I did another year down in LA, just modeling full time. And then I decided I need a little breather. So some friends of mine were moving out here to Colorado, and I just came with them. And I took that break. I'm still modeling, just part time.
That's awesome. And when we did the pre-interview, you mentioned that you did a lot of your modeling at the beginning of the body positivity movement, which was super important to you, particularly being 14 and 15, so sort of growing up within that. So tell us, what was that like?
It was very scary. It felt like a lot of pressure. I was the first junior plus size model at TCM Models, my agency in Seattle. And that felt really amazing, but also felt like a lot of weight on my shoulders at the same time. But my agent worked with me and was really encouraging about just being kind of a voice for young girls who look like me. And I'm a size 18, and that's, pretty average for women. But at the time, going from seeing these supermodels who were size zero, double zero, like that was kind of a crazy concept to be that size in this type of industry. But yeah, I just I sort of approached it by doing just what everyone else was doing, but being like, hey, this is what my body looks like. That's okay. And through all the ups and downs with my career, that's kind of been what I've held on to is being that, you know, person that a little girl can look at in a magazine or on Instagram or a commercial and think, oh, she looks like me. That's really cool to see in the media. And it's really important.
Oh, you said that would have been, the 2010s, the early 2010s. How do you at 14, which is arguably still a girl
Yeah.
yourself, how do you rally that um like resilience and steely determination to say, I can handle this? Because you said there were times where it was hard. You saw other people walk in and come out crying. And for you to be different, and if I looked at your one agency thing properly, I think it said you're 5'11. So you're already somebody who's taller and, you're noticeable. You
Mhm.
can't shrink in a crowd. So
Yeah.
as somebody who is,
No.
you're
And
tall, you're
the
going
red
through
hair and
puberty. Where do you get that ability to say, okay, like I have to be this person so that other people have somebody to look to?
I got a lot of encouragement from my mom. She has always encouraged me to embrace my body while also being the healthiest that I can be. She just has always wanted me to be happy and comfortable with who I am. So she was definitely a big part of it. Um, Her and my agent encouraged me to find other plus size models to kind of use as a guide. So when I first started, Ashley Graham was just kind of coming out of her shell, and she was on the cover of Sports Illustrated around that time, and like that was her big, step out into the modeling world. So I used her as a lot of inspiration and influence. Philomena Quo is another model who I really looked up to. And then all of these other curvy girls just kind of started coming out of the woodwork. And I just kind of looked at them, looked at how they were, approaching their careers, what they were posting on social media about this movement, like what they had to say about it, watching interviews and stuff like that. But then also the other models that I worked with within the same agency, or even just meeting in passing on casting calls, who had been in this game a lot longer than me, like going onto set as a 14 or 15-year-old, I looked very mature for my age, so people didn't think that I was that young. So I was working with these girls in like their mid 20s, even 30s, and I would just ask questions and just ask, what's your experience been like? What have you learned? What do you do? Just trying to gain all of that information that I can, um, so that I can go into it not so just blinded by everything that's going on.
Obviously, now the whole curvy movement is kind of just like who we are.
Mhm.
I don't know that it's even really differentiated, and I think you mentioned that too. So it's just modeling as an industry now, but at that point, it was still very much two separate worlds. So do you feel like there was more camaraderie within the group of the plus size models than there were? Did you feel a connectedness to them because you were maybe fighting that same battle for recognition and equality within the field, especially when in reality, you're the ones who represent what most people are living, not this extreme ideal on the other end of the spectrum.
That was unfortunately kind of how it was for quite a few years at the start of my career, which I didn't like. I never wanted it to be us against them. Um, but getting some dirty looks from casting directors or even other models was kind of the norm when I first started. And it was really tough. I went into several interviews, casting calls where I was just flat out told you're too big for our brand, which is really unfortunate. But and they would always try and frame it as, oh, we have this certain look that we've always gone for, and that's what we're gonna stick with. And it was surprising how many brands didn't want to hop on the bandwagon at the start, of the body inclusivity movement. Um, but yeah, I definitely found that camaraderie amongst other curvy girls, and I always tried to just be kind to everyone, make friends with everyone, other models on set and whatnot. But that's just how it went sometimes.
Do you feel like there's been a genuine acceptance overall within the fashion industry? Do you now feel like you can walk into a room without there being like, oh, okay, oh, I don't want to have to tell them this doesn't fit with our brand? Do you feel like it's maybe shifted to even where you've maybe gotten to a more valuable position than some of the people who are have unattainable bodies?
100%. I think there's been a complete 180, um, with that whole movement, because now it's not just about girls who are bigger. It's we're now involving, trans people and like people a part of the LGBTQ plus community, and people with disabilities and all different shapes, all different colors, from all different backgrounds, which is so amazing. And that is kind of the new norm now, which makes me really, really excited. And I'm glad that I'm still a part of this industry with all of that going on. But yeah, it's been interesting to notice just within the last couple years. My agents will give me a call and be like, "Hey, this brand wants someone who's size 18, who's 6 feet tall. I'm 5'11" and some change, so we're gonna call it 6 feet tall. And they want a redhead." I'm like, "Okay, that's me." And they specifically want that because they're going for they want that kind of melting pot on set now, not just the cookie cutter image that we had several years ago when it came to modeling. So that's been really, really cool to see in real time.
Let's go back to when you first started independently. And so you moved to New York by yourself. And you told me that I asked you in the pre interview what some of the biggest takeaways were, what you're really proud of, and what what got you through some of those harder times? And you shared something really great that your mom told you. So will you share that story?
So I'm an only child, and I have a really, really close relationship with my mom. And she lived in New York in her 20s. So she was, giving me all the pep talks and getting me ready to go out and do that, be in the real world. And we have a very optimistic outlook on life, me and my mom. And she told me, you're a good person, you attract good people, you're gonna, just have those people naturally in your circle, and people will help you if you ask for help. People want to help you generally. So if you're ever in a position where you just any scenario that could happen as an 18-year-old in New York City, whether you're asking for directions on the street, or you don't feel safe in a certain neighborhood, or you're on set and something comes up that, maybe I'm not used to from working in Seattle, like it's a very different world in New York City, ask someone for help. And generally, they will not only help you, but they will be happy to help you because it feels good for them. And I definitely found that in every community that I've lived in.
And I agree with that. I think that's something that people really have a hard time accepting. And as crazy as it sounds, it's something that you have to really have repeated in your life through your whole life. I
Mhm.
think to realize that asking for help doesn't mean that you're weak. It doesn't mean that you're failing, and that most people do want to help. Most people
Yeah.
don't feel like it's a burden.
Hmm.
Did you feel like people were overwhelmingly welcoming to you when you had questions?
Definitely. And it was surprising in New York because I always had that image in my head of like the big city. You got to be tough. Like no one's gonna look out for you. But I had my landlord in New York City at the second apartment that I lived in. My mom found her and she came out with me and stayed with me for a couple months just to like get me settled and everything. But my landlord, Ursula, I rented a little basement from her, and she kind of became like this New York motherly figure to me. She became friends with my mom, and my mom just asked her, take care of my girl. And that's what she did. Like she, she would take me out to lunch and she'd be like, okay, this is what the real world is like. Here are the things you need to know. Here are the things that are going to come up that are going to be scary, but here's how you're going to tackle them. So, her especially was, she was a big figure in my life at the start of my career. And then just from then on, like, I don't know, I feel like people just kind of pop into your life unexpectedly and teach you lessons that you didn't know that you necessarily needed. And as a 18, 19-year-old kid, just trying, even now, 24-year-old kid still, just trying to be an adult and make it in the adult world. Like I I always welcome adults who want to impose wisdom on me. And I think it's really important to look for that and to absorb that.
What was so different, in your opinion? You've lived in a lot of different places now. You said that you're ultimately a West Coast girl, but what are those differences between there? Because you said it was not the perception that you thought it would be, but still, I mean, New
Mhm,
York is an enormous place that can be scary, but also super exciting.
mhm.
So what didn't you anticipate, maybe some of the positives that you did not anticipate?
So where I grew up in Washington State was about 20 minutes north of Seattle, but it still felt very much like a bubble. And that was really great growing up as a pretty shy kid, not being in a super crazy environment. I had my close friends and my family who were all pretty much back in Washington. And growing up in my small town was amazing. But I definitely think I needed a little bit of a culture shock. And I got that living in New York. I had not been exposed to very much outside of my community where I grew up, and just meeting people from all walks of life, all different backgrounds, like so many different stories, and some stories that were really unfortunate, but these people still had such a positive outlook on life and being like, okay, teach me how you did that. Like, how are you this amazing person, but you still went through all of that? Um, was really important and really set me up for success just with all the things that I've gone through since then. And I think it was really important to learn that and see that as at such a young age. And on the unfortunate side, being exposed to like some real world problems at a young age, like you're in a major city, you're going to see homelessness and you're going to see people who are really really struggling, and to build that empathy for them is super super important. So I think that served me really well.
I agree with you. I kind of had the reverse journey that you did. I started out on the East Coast, moved to the West Coast, and then I should have just listened to Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz, that there's no place like home, because I've returned back. I made a loop
Yeah.
though. And, the area of Pittsburgh that I grew up in is very much a bubble also. And then we moved to Las Vegas, and that's like,
Mm.
that was 2004. So, I mean, there was, before the housing crash, there was money and drugs and, I mean, everything you could imagine. Like Las Vegas is a wild, wild place. And I am a very straight edge person, which made it good for me because I was able to live there and not get sucked into those other things. But
Mhm.
it was just, it's shocking to me, and then to see, I mean, you have people from all over the world there, so it's much, much, much tinier than New York, obviously, but
Mhm.
still, it's like that, it's a microcosm of what happens there. All of a sudden, you see
Yeah.
homelessness that I didn't see, and drug use that I didn't see, and, you know, a all the things that you were sort of insulated from before, and then we moved to Texas,
Mhm.
and that was like a whole different world. We were an hour north of Dallas, and
Yeah.
then we moved to Charleston, South Carolina, and that was a whole different world too, and then moved back here, and I was like, just like, it was so weird. And I don't know, you'll have to tell me, do you have this experience? I think one of the good things and bad things about moving so much is that you do experience all these different things and get to know these different things. But I think when you live in one place, neither of us have done that, so maybe we're wrong. But when you live in one place, I think you have the ability to think back on your life and think like, oh, I missed that time when I had whatever, like a period of life. And those people might still be there. So
Mhm.
you could say, like, oh, let's go back to lunch and relive the good old days. But when you moved all over,
Mhm.
you can't. Your life isn't in one place. So I'll be like, oh my God, I really wish that I could go see Jody, and I miss Ashley, and I miss Stephanie. But nobody is Jody and Ashley are in the same place, but so many of my friends are in different places or like restaurants. Your whole life is like little individual pieces, which is really awesome, but also like confusing and sad in another way.
Yeah. Yeah, I've definitely experienced that, but it's it's worked out to where I can kind of compartmentalize, when I want to feel certain types of nostalgia. So my mom lives on the East Coast. She lives in Maryland. So if I and she loves New York. So if I want to go back and like revisit some of my favorite spots and kind of feel that New York vibe again, I can just pop over and see her and we'll go do a day trip and we'll do that. If I want to go back and see my family in Washington, they're always there, and we have our family dinners and we do all of that. I have a beautiful friend group here in Colorado, but I met some of them back in California, so we love going out there and revisiting our old stomping grounds. So yeah, I am kind of from all over. I say I'm from Washington State, but that I don't know, that doesn't really feel like home to me anymore. It just feels like one of my homes. And I kind of like that I have multiple places that I can call home and I have so many beautiful memories in. And I also have the ability to show new people in my life all of those old places, taking them back, and whether it's meeting my family or we take a trip down to California and I'm like, okay, we're not going to do the touristy things. I'm going to show you like the secret spots. I love doing that for people. So yeah, I'm really grateful that I've been able to travel all over. I don't regret it at all.
What do you think is the most special or best part of your life? here in general, lessons that you've learned, just like when you think of like, oh my God, this is my favorite thing or my best thing, what is that?
I would say that it's the community I have built in Colorado, and by extension, the person that I have become because of that. Um, I'm so grateful for the friends that I've met out here. I have the biggest friend group that I've ever had out here. Um, Even before I moved away from home, I didn't even have this many people that I could, I have so many people that I could go down the list if I'm ever like, I need to call somebody. I need a friend here right now. I need someone to talk to. Like, there's so much love in my friend group and so much um, community in general in Boulder. Everyone is just so full of life here, and there's such a better quality of life here. People just generally take care of each other, and that's made me sort of soften the edges that I built on myself, having to toughen up living in New York and LA. I kind of was able to finally take a breath and be like, oh, I don't have to be on edge all the time. I don't have to be looking out for what could go wrong, not just being in a big city, but just being in that industry and that mindset with modeling of having to be really, really strong all the time. It was nice to just kind of have a to go back to being vulnerable, and it's okay to have bad days and it's okay to not be on all the time, because with modeling you kind of have to. If you're working and you're having a bad day, it's not like, I work at Trader Joe's right now, and if I'm having an off day, I can let one of my managers know, I can let my team know, and I can be a little grumpy at work sometimes, but they get it and that's okay. With modeling, you can't necessarily do that. So just kind of being able to be a person again and have people around me that understand we're all human, and we'll be here for you in those human moments. Um, yeah, and it's just made me a better person. I've been able to be there for my mom, you know, being an adult. I have such a better understanding of what she's gone through and what she continues to go through. So I feel like it's really important for me and my mom's relationship for me to be like, okay, I'm going to let you have your time where you can crumble and cry to me, and I'll be there for you. And then, sh- she it's a trade-off. If I have to call her and be like, I need my mom right now, like, she can do that for me, but then I can also be there for her because I have this stable community surrounding me and lifting me up to be that empathetic person.
It sounds like maybe the universe has, serendipitously put that into your life over time
Hmm.
because you've actively sought out ways to be positive and to do the right thing and been a great role model for other people. You said that that was something that was important to you from the beginning. So, how important do you think the role of serendipity in the universe in general, sort of just putting things where you need it? Like, how much do you lean on that in your life for what your next steps are?
I am huge on letting the universe just take over. I definitely believe in manifestation and just kind of not holding on to things so tightly. If there's something that, whether it's something you really, really want or something you're really, really struggling with, holding on to it is only going to make it worse because you're keeping it, and it's just going to keep eating away at you. So releasing all of that to the universe, I have seen in my life that that works, and that it always comes back to you if you have that trust. um my mom and I have gone through some really hard times together, but we learned a lot about each other and a lot about trusting that there's something bigger out there that is going to take care of us. And we've definitely seen that come into play. And karma has come back to us in really beautiful ways. So I'm definitely a big believer in that. And I try to keep myself grounded in that if I'm ever struggling, whether it's financially, emotionally, just kind of taking a minute to remember that I don't have to carry it. Um, and if I'm in a position where I feel like maybe my friends are also going through a really tough time right now, and I don't want, not to say that I'm burdening them, but I don't want to put that on their plate. I always have my backup, which is just kind of letting it go with the wind and just being like, okay, this is something that is a little scary right now, but my my mantra that I always kind of stick with when things are tough is everything has worked out so far, so there's no reason that it won't work out.
I feel the same way. I very much believe in all of those things that you did. So that's, hitting all of the buttons that make me happy
Mhm.
because it does. There are so many times that you think, oh God, I wish this worked out or I want this to happen. And then it doesn't. And you're, I don't want to say devastated, but sometimes you could be in that
Yeah.
moment. And then something comes around and, even if it's years later, you look back and think, "Oh my gosh, that's why this didn't work out or that's why I ended up here." And it's incredible. Is there
Mhm.
anything like a standout time that happened for you and you just thought like, "Holy crap, this is it."
There's been so many, but I feel like before I moved to Colorado, I was living in LA and I was just really struggling because I had never really, after leaving my hometown, I felt like I had never really chosen a place to live that was just for me. Um, I really struggled. I still struggle with it, but especially back then with being a big people pleaser and the fear of disappointing people, whether it was my parents or my teachers or then, my agent. Um, so I would always just choose what I thought would be best for others and what everybody wanted me to do. And like I said, I have no regrets about the places that I've lived. I don't believe really in accidents. I think everything happens for a reason. So I was meant to be in those places. But I got to a point where I was just like, I need somewhere that's on my terms, that's going to make me happy, that I'm going into with the right mindset, and I'm going to, put my priorities on my friends and building relationships and working on myself. And I sort of had a little bit of a breakdown in LA where I was like, something needs to change. Something has to be different. As much as I loved living in California, I was still there for work. Um, so that's it. It was so beautifully cosmically timed that my friend Abby um, told me that she had an extra bedroom in Boulder, and I was like, okay, this is it. I gave it to the universe. This is it coming back to me. I had never visited Colorado really before this, but something inside of me was just telling me like, this is your time to shine, and it worked out.
Amazing. So with that, my final question, what impression do you hope to leave on the universe and where do you think it's going to take you next? Do you have any inklings? I know you just moved into a place in Boulder, so probably right there now unpacking. But
Yeah.
but beyond that, what do you feel like is written for you?
I used to really worry about the big picture, and that caused me a lot of stress in my life. So right now, I am focusing on living in the moment, being with my friends, my boyfriend, being there for my mom, just being there with the people that I love and who love me, and just kind of taking it one day at a time. Um, I have, I'm a dreamer. I have a lot of daydreams that I love to go back to, and I kind of use that as my manifestation. But all in all, I'm just kind of letting the universe do what it needs to do for me. Because I think at this point, it knows me pretty well and it knows what's in my heart and what I prioritize in my life. And I think everything else is just going to work out the way that it needs to. So for right now, I'm happy in Colorado. I'm living my life. Um, yeah, I I can't wait for what the future holds, but I'm not going to worry about it too much.
Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciated this conversation and hearing about your journey. It was a really cool story to learn about.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you all for watching. We'll talk to you soon. Bye bye.